How can you determine an appropriate measure of center or variability for a data set? Think about this question during the lesson. Luis is looking at the data provided by two different vendors at a recent Hispanic festival. He wants to determine the average cost for both vendors to advertise for next year's festival. Should Luis use the mean or the median to describe each data set? You can analyze the distribution of data to determine an appropriate measure of center. Graph the data for the Mexican plates on a line plot and choose an appropriate measure of center. The data points appear evenly distributed on the line plot. The spread of the data appears the same on both sides of the mean. When a data set is evenly distributed, the mean is the appropriate measure of center. Luis should use the mean or average, 80 and 7/10, to describe this data set. Graph the data for the ceramic figurines on a line plot. Choose an appropriate measure of center.
Select your answer.
The data points appear unevenly distributed. The data can be skewed to the left or right. Most of these data points appear on the left side of the line plot. The outlier can impact the mean. The median is the appropriate measure of center for a skewed data set. Luis should use the median or middle value, 40, to describe this data set. Luis makes a box plot for a third company at the festival. Should he use the mean or median to describe the data set?
Luis should choose the median, which is the middle number, right here, 60, to represent the data, because a lot of the data skew to the right of this box plot. So using that median would give us a better idea of the measure of data here.
The line plot displays the cost of another vendor's pottery at the Hispanic festival. What is an appropriate measure of variability to summarize this data set?
Range and IQR, interquartile range, are measures of variability. Each describes the variation in data set using a single number. This data set has an outlier. So the IQR, 17 and 5/10, is an appropriate summary measure of variability. The IQR represents the range of the middle 50% of the data, so it is not impacted by an outlier. To use the range, we would be taking the greater number and subtracting it by the least number, and that would not give us the best variability of this data, with that being the only one over here versus the rest of the data.
Is the range or the IQR an appropriate measure of variability to summarize this data set?
The range would be the best choice in this situation to measure the variability because the data is centered here. There is no outlier. So the range would be a good choice to choose to summarize this data.
Adrian tracks the amount of time it takes her to get to school. Adrian's walking data include the fastest time of 15 minutes and the slowest time of 32 minutes. She displays the data in a histogram and stem and leaf plot. If Adrian leaves for school at the same time each morning, would walking or biking be better to get her to school on time?
Adrian should choose the range as the measure of variability because it describes the variability in minutes for all data points. So the range would be the 32 minutes minus the 15, and then that would give us 17 minutes. The less variability there is in the time to get to school, the more likely to arrive on time. So here the range would be 16 and 5/10 and 13 and 5/10, and you subtract those, you're left with 3 minutes. And so a measure of variability should be used to answer the question, and so the least amount of minutes would definitely be to bike herself to school.
How can Adrian use a measure of center to determine the fastest way to get to school? Explain.
Adrian can use one of the measures of center, which would be the mean or median. If she took the median to determine which is faster to ride a bike or to walk, the median for her walk time would be about 19 to 20 minutes, and the median of the bike time would be about 15 minutes. And so based on that median, again, biking is faster, 15 minutes is less than the 19 to 20 minutes for walking to school.